Hey, what's going on? It's Matt, and we're back with another expert interview where we're tackling some of the issues that are going on in our economy right now with the coronavirus, COVID-19. Today, I'm joined with a friend and a networking partner of mine and an attorney, Scott Gunther. Scott, what's going on?
Working hard, Matt, staying busy despite all the challenges we're all dealing with these days.
Yeah, so what made me think of you in this case, and we'll get to some of the points on what I want to talk about later on with this, because you got some good ideas I think are great to talk about. But what made me think of you was in 2008, my family was going through shutting down our boat and RV dealership. We were going to get out of the business. I was back in marketing already. We had a great plan. Well, when the economy crashes, great plans go out the window. And we had a tough time that summer. I mean, literally, probably mentally, the toughest time I've had in my entire life. The one thing that was behind us that helped us was your law firm. And this is before I knew you, but we worked with Dennis, and the advice we got, I guess maybe even the peer counseling helped us get through a tough time. And looking back, it was wild how much easier it made it. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about going through a process like that. So we'll get to that later. But I want to just kind of, pick your brain, because you're like me, you deal with a lot of business owners. And so you're getting every angle come at you. A lot of them probably are leaning on you, asking questions. Looking at right now, a big thing is cash flow. Businesses, the government just announced the CARES Act last Friday. There's already some emergency loans out there. What are some things that you're advising clients or that you're hearing clients talk about with regards to what they can look at regards to cash flow and things of that nature?
So first of all, Matt, I want to thank you for including me in this, and I'm certainly eager to talk with you about some of these issues considering your experience. And you've been through this sort of thing before. You've been through the ups and downs. A lot of business owners have, but some haven't. And to your point, having an attorney involved or legal counsel available to you to work through that process, I think is really important, not just from a legal standpoint, but also from a mental standpoint, because like you mentioned, attorneys have been through these situations before, working with clients who are on the verge of becoming insolvent and that sort of thing. So it hopefully gives a little bit of comfort to you or other clients to have somebody who can walk you through the process. But in terms of your specific question about, what are some things you can do to work through current cash flow challenges, you mentioned the CARES Act. That's a great resource for lots of small businesses. And it basically, that law provides for a loan up to, a good thumbnail overview is about 2.5 times a company's monthly payroll. And if you use that, they're calling it a loan, but if you use the proceeds from that loan through the SBA within 8 weeks to pay for its intended purpose, which is payroll, and if you meet certain other criteria, such as not laying off employees, then that loan's forgiven. So it's basically a grant, or is essentially a grant under many circumstances. So that's something businesses can certainly do. I would also encourage businesses to reach out to creditors. If you're having cash flow difficulties, reach out to vendors, reach out to landlords, and ask for them to cut you a little bit of slack in terms of making those payments. And I think a lot of businesses will find that given the current economic climate, those types of creditors are going to be very willing to work with them on, giving them some leniency in terms of when payments are due and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that was one that I also told somebody the other day. It goes two ways. Like, I've looked at some of our people that I work with, like, hey, what can we do? And I've also told our current clients, I've got clients right now that aren't paying us because they're a restaurant. They're getting crushed. They're not in a position to pay us. So you got to look both ways. But one thing I did, I've heard from a couple of people, a friend of mine was talking to his landlord, and he's got a huge rent payment. And he said, he called the landlord and said, hey, I'm going to need some leeway until, one, this CARES Act thing comes through, but two, even short term. And the guy's like, hey, let's do this. Your rent is X amount the next 3 months. Let's split it in half. I'll forgive half. You take half, and we'll spread that half over 6 months. That way his payment's a little more, in month 3, 4, 5, and 6 than normally be, but it's helping both sides of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And And it's, I think businesses should also be prepared along those same lines to work with their own customers and their own debtors. You've built up this relationship with a customer over, months or years or even decades in some situations. And, that should, I would hope for most businesses, make them more inclined to work with their own customers and debtors who have similar cash flow challenges.
Yeah, that was something that surprised me, and it's really changed me from a standpoint of what we're doing for clients. I don't know that I'd be doing what I'm doing now had it not been for prior experience. But back in '08 when we closed, we had vendors that we had spent $5 to $10 million with over the prior years because we were doing 15 million a year in sales, and we were buying from a lot of companies. And I was amazed at the minute our cash shut off going to them and how quickly they went away. And I was just, I mean, these are people that I thought were friends. And I was just like, wow, I don't want to be that person. So I've told clients, I had a client the other day ask me, he's like, hey, we need to pause what we're doing. And I said, well, is it money? He's like, yeah. I'm like, we'll keep everything going. When you get to a good point in a couple month or 2 or 3, then we'll revisit. But you've been a good vendor for us, a good client of ours for 2 or 3 years. It's the least we can do to help you in these times right now.
Yeah, totally agree.
What about something that I look back on and granted nobody's prepared for it. Like we prepare our house for a fire. You've got fire alarms. You've got a ladder on the second floor. You don't prepare your business a lot of times when the crap hits the fan like it has here. What are some things businesses can do to kind of, they got some downtime right now. Some places are closed. Some places are scaled back. What can people do to kind of get their house in order right now that they might not be thinking about?
I think that's a great point, and that this health crisis is certainly affecting different industries in dramatically different ways. But if you're in one of those industries, like the restaurant industry, for instance, where you do have a little bit of downtime right now, I think it's a great time, and you can view it as an opportunity to kind of get your house in order, as you mentioned, and take care of some things that maybe have been on the back burner for a long time. Good examples of that would be, maybe it's a good time to refresh your strategic plan. Maybe it's a good time to refresh your marketing plan or your social media marketing, which of course is your wheelhouse, Matt. Another thing you could do is I have lots of clients who have been, looking at updating their employment manual, for instance, and it's something they've wanted to do for months or years, but because business has been so good for the last 2 years, it's really hard to put down doing the things what makes you profitable so that you can do something like that. Well, this is a great time to take a look at that and maybe update your employment manual so that when this is all in the rearview mirror, hopefully, in weeks or a month or 2 months, you're ready to hit the ground running and move forward.
It's funny you mentioned the employment manual. I actually heard somebody talk about this the other day and it had never crossed my mind. And I guess it depends how you looked at it. His comment was this gentleman has 80 people he had laid off because of the situation. And he said, I'm looking at this. I try to look at the positive. He's like, of those 80, I'm confident. I mean, I hope a lot of them come back, but a lot of them won't. It's just what happens. Like they move on, they end up moving away, whatever. He's like, but I'm looking at this as a fresh start because we've got some things we've been doing internally that we've allowed employees to abuse that should have stopped years ago. He's like, so we're going to look at this as a refresh to our employment. Like when people come back, this is what the company looks like. This is our policies. This is our things. And as you come back on board, this is what you're coming back into. We're getting rid of some of the old stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And along those lines too, one thing a lot of companies need to be thinking about is updating their employment manual to provide for how they're going to handle this new federal legislation that just became effective earlier this week. I'm talking specifically about the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. That's something that companies really need to have a written policy in place in terms of how they're going to address those issues.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so last but not least, this is what really got us talking the other day. I said this in BNI, and I meant it sincerely, was that when we went through this in 2008, your law firm was there to help us, give us a lot of guidance. And there was a lot of things I had in my mind that were complete misnomers. Like I was 32. I had been in business since I was 21. but a lot of it was run and gun and learn on your own. Like we learned stuff now on YouTube on how to fix our house. I was learning that stuff on the run with my business. And when I saw that we were going out of business, because we were going to close anyways, but I saw, okay, well, we're closing a little quicker than we thought and in a lot worse position than we had hoped. I had all these things going through my head. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what happens when you close a business? Do you go to jail? Like you just had all these things in my head, because you got vendors you owe millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. You got payroll. You got all these different things. You're like, how do I correctly do this? Unfortunately, there's going to be businesses that don't survive this. I hate to say that, but we all going to have places we love to go eat or places to shop that in 2 months will not be open. What is some advice you would give small businesses with regards to some of those things that are going to come up if they decide to close?
I think that's a great question. And a few things to consider along those lines are, first of all, in many situations, businesses that become insolvent don't need to go through the time, hassle, and expense of a bankruptcy proceeding. In a lot of situations, personal bankruptcy might make more sense than a business bankruptcy. And even there, the most typical situation where that would be necessary is where the business owner or the principal has personal guarantees that he or she has signed regarding the debts of the business. Now, in those situations, once the business becomes insolvent and you're personally on the hook for whatever the debt obligations are, you might need to file a personal bankruptcy in those situations.
So it's kind of funny. I think that the perception, at least the perception a lot of businesses have, if they come to that conclusion that their business shuts down or they have to file bankruptcy personally, is that the world is over. And especially with this happening during a catastrophe, I'm not saying it's a good time you could ever file bankruptcy or ever close a business, but having it happen in something like this, in 6 months, banks don't look back and go, oh, look at that deadbeat. They look back and go, that's what happened to a lot of people, right?
Yeah, I think you're right, especially in this situation where, lenders 6 months from now or a year from now or 5 years from now are going to fully recognize that this is a situation that was completely out of the business owner's control, something that was completely unanticipated. And I really think lenders will be less inclined than ever to, mark that as a strike against a business owner. And anybody who has, if you get into that position where you really need to shut down the business and even file for personal bankruptcy, keep in mind, like you said, Matt, it's not the end of the world. You still have earning capacity, which is the most important thing. And as long as you have earning capacity and the ability to earn money, you have the ability to accumulate assets, which will build collateral. And when you're looking for a loan 6 months from now or a year from now, as long as you have some collateral that a bank can take a security interest in, I don't think the bank is going to care, or any lender is going to be too concerned about something that happened a year ago or 5 years ago that was completely out of your control.
And I remember when we closed our dealership, the hardest part for me was, we had this game plan that, hey, we were winding it down from March of 2008 to October, because we decided, unfortunately, when we had already committed to the year's inventory, we couldn't come out in March and go, hey, we're closing in 6 months, because nobody would have shopped with us for 6 months. So we had this game plan that we were going to slowly wind the company down by October. I went back into marketing. My dad was down to part-time, and we were kind of just, hey, we're just going to breeze through this thing. Well, the economy collapsed. And I remember looking at it like we had a game plan for how we were going to strategically get our employees to better places by the fall. I was like, oh, crap, now I've got 45 people that if we close this place in the next month or two, they're out of a job. And, there was all the things that went through my mind with them, with customers. And the biggest part I struggled with personally, and I know my dad did too, especially you look at it as you failed a lot of people. And I remember like a month or two after it happened, like I wanted to go into hiding to some extent, because I'm like, oh my gosh, we failed. And I remember talking to friends of mine who had big companies that had the same things, like, Matt, all of us failed. All of us went through the same thing. And especially that was back then, just the economy collapsed. And if you were doing something where people had to borrow money to buy houses, boats, cars, RVs, they weren't getting money to buy a boat or a camper at that time. Now, look at restaurants. I'm a partner in a gym. all these businesses can't even operate. I mean, restaurants can operate to some capacity, but gyms, nail salons, hair salons, they're closed. And so that's a tough thing to really navigate through. So if it does come down to a point where you have to restart or reset, I hope people realize that, it's out there and that this isn't a scarlet letter. This is, something you can move on from pretty quickly and rebound pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Well, cool. Well, if somebody wants to contact you, I guess tell us your firm name, because I don't want to mess it up because I know their legal names are long.
It's a long name. So yeah, so I am a partner with Adams, Stepner, Wolterman, and Dusing. We're a full-service law firm located in Covington, Kentucky. And if anybody needs to reach us, you can visit our website at www.aswdlaw.com. You can reach me at 859-394-6200, or you can email me at sgunther, that's GUENTHER, at aswdlaw.com.
Cool. And I'll drop all that in the video too and in the post where I put it up. I appreciate your time. Like I said, we survived and you guys helped us mentally and everything else back in 2008. Hopefully some businesses can get advice, because I think probably one of the best people they can reach out to is somebody like you, even if they don't think they're going to be in trouble in 2 or 3 months, to get advice to make sure they're on the right path.
Yep, I agree. And thank you for the kind words, and thank you for including me this morning.
Cool. Thanks, Scott.
Take care.